But I just wanted to share sort of our experience with using different geodesign tools for the general plan process. Kind of realized when I was putting this presentation together that maybe people don't know what a general plan is, coming from different areas of the United States. And a general plan is basically, it's the plan for development of a community for the next 10, 15, 20 years. And so we're going to focus today on basically just the land use portion of that. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about the general plan process and then how we're using these tools in that process. Now this is going to be a journey. So I know in the description I had scoped a little bit of ArcGIS Urban, and I'm going to show a little bit of that. But it involves a lot of different factors, very, very much geodesign principles. And I always like to start my presentations with this, right? Urban planners and designers depend on people of the place. I know that we've heard that a couple of times this morning, to help guide policy development and project designs to gain confidence in the decision makers, right? So collaboration, public engagement, feedback refinement, consensus building, and policy adoption are all key steps in this process. So general plan. So I work for a company, PlaceWorks. We're a California-based urban planning firm. We have 35 years of experience in general plans. We've done over 100 general plans. And we've been incorporating geodesign principles since 2014. So we have a long storied history of doing general plans, but just a short time have started to change the way that we approach these plans, with the idea of consensus and engagement being a cornerstone to the development of these plans. And we've developed different web-based tools, simple tools to engage with the public, to create your own plan, to look at policy trade-offs, and sort of get a connection and get some involvement, right, with the constituencies. So let's just jump right into the case study that I'm going to talk about today. So the city of San Mateo, a Bay Area community, Central California, is ready to do their 2040 vision plan, right, their general plan. And the first phase is to establish visions and values and your goals, right? So that's sort of, what we've talked about throughout the day in different themes is vision and values are the core to these projects, and developing your core values, identifying those. And so in the community engagement and input process, we're looking at a couple of stages: existing conditions and visioning, just basically going out and talking with the community, getting a consensus, so you can kind of bear down on what exactly is going to be the focus of this general plan and what kind of goals you're trying to attain. And then create these land use alternatives and evaluate those, and then eventually get to an adoption phase. So what technologies did we leverage? What we've leveraged so far: Maptionaire. It's a public input-based mapping application that the city likes to use. I've used it on a number of occasions, and it's something that we incorporate in our workflow. ArcGIS Pro, ArcGIS Online, Geo Planner, and then of course ArcGIS Urban. So here's a shot of the Maptionaire application. It's basically the communities are able to take a survey and put in opinions, and based on those opinions and input, we get this great database of information that we then synthesize, right? So we were identifying areas of strong interest in the city with the purpose of actually creating study areas, right? So the preference survey is there on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side is the formulation of these study areas, these areas of focus for the general plan land use analysis. And then, the next phase is, this city is a built-out community, but they need to grow, obviously, and be strategic about that growth. So playing around with land use types, and then metrics, right? Sort of standardized so that we can start to look at performance of these different land use scenarios. And this is what we typically do as planners, build spreadsheets, right? It's spreadsheets of data, information, but there's not a lot of context here, right? I mean, you get the data and you can synthesize what's going on and you can get some outcomes, but you don't have a spatial relationship to that. And sometimes it's just a little bit hard to to understand. So I'm going to talk about some of the tools that we use. So we use Geo Planner. So Geo Planner, we had a couple of projects earlier today that talked about Geo Planner. And we use this to test and modify land uses, right? So we came up with this sort of our kind of stack for a geodesign process, right? Develop, test, collaborate, modify, and then go back and test again and collaborate and modify and just iterate through that until you select an actually preferred land use scenario. And this is kind of what the outcome was, right? So then you see these study areas, and we start to plan those study areas, apply these use types, and get some metrics and some outcomes. And then we have a preferred land use scenario. So at this point, we have a scenario, and we now present it to the community, right? So then we create these illustrative boards, talk about this, what the different design alternatives are, and engage the community. This is in a briefing book. This was presented to the Planning Commission. And so we've got all alternatives. So now we're at this next phase, right? Evaluate the land use alternatives, right? And you might ask, well, didn't you just evaluate those land use alternatives with those metrics, those outcomes in the dashboards in Geo Planner? Yes, but that was just two-dimensionally. And we find that three-dimensional kind of tells an additional story, right? Looking at what this land use types and these built form typologies look like on the ground, right? So we're actually venturing into this phase right now. We're not quite there yet, but the idea behind this is to apply those land uses that we came up with in the Geo Planner phase to again go through another kind of geodesign process. We want to visualize, right? That's the power of ArcGIS Urban. Is to be able to visualize these land uses, illustrate the form and massing, right? Very important in the built community to look at, okay, you're bringing on development. What is that going to look like? How is that going to change the built environment? Modify, the next phase, modify those, sharing a collaborative effort, sharing these scenes with the community, the stakeholders, and obviously the people of the place, the planners that know that culture of that community and how those land uses will be perceived. Share those out to the community to get broad scale input, and then refine those, right? So it's sort of that cyclical process, and it's very much like a geodesign iteration, iterate, right? That's what planners do. And this is a couple views of some preliminary slides of what we're doing with Urban, right? Defining the work areas, defining the places, starting to look at planning areas, and looking at increments of change and scale, looking at these land uses and applied in a 3D environment, basically. And just having a context that the planners can use to sort of test hypotheses and to kind of visualize what the built-out scenario would look like. And another key aspect is looking at what the potential is, right? So this slide here shows some of the built environment, but then also these volumes represent the zoning volumes, what their existing code can provide, right? And we see some of the buildings here on the right-hand side kind of piercing that envelope, right? So what's going on there, and is there a reason that we should be changing these parameters, right? And one of the key things that I should point out is right now ArcGIS Urban is very zoning based, and a general plan is land use based, right? You're not getting into the setback criteria in a general plan. You're looking at general land uses and density. So this is where we're sort of now kind of venturing into new space where ArcGIS Urban is a tool to visualize, but we're still going to use zoning principles to actually test our hypothesis and our scenarios. And that's it. I mean, this is just another view, another way to visualize that massing, the street view. And that's basically the summary. It's still a work in progress. Hopefully have more to share next time around, and looking very much forward to implementing ArcGIS Urban on the later stages of this project. Thank you.